Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work, a practical guide from the country's foremost relationship expert, revised and updated, by John M. Gottman, Ph.D., and Nan Silver. Narrated by Eric Michael Summerer. Introduction. When we sat down to write the first edition of this book, we were excited to share the results of laboratory research into relationships, but we knew we'd face some skepticism. Could scientific study of something as intangible, idiosyncratic, and personal as romantic love deliver useful advice to couples in the real world? Well, more than 15 years and millions of readers later, we are happy to report that the 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work has done just that. Countless readers across the globe tell us that the book's strategies have enhanced, shielded, or saved their relationship. We have received thank yous from every imaginable type of couple, including newlyweds, traditional spouses, 2 career partners, devoutly religious spouses, military couples, cohabitants, same-sex partners, not yet marrieds, divorced people looking toward the future, and counselors who work with all of the above. It is a great source of satisfaction and pride that we have been able to help so many people. We're also gratified that research continues to confirm what these readers consistently tell us. The 7 principles can have a powerfully positive effect on your relationship. In fact, a randomized clinical study by John and his co-researchers, Julia Babcock, Kim Ryan, and Julie Gottman, found that married couples who simply read the 7 principles and worked through the quizzes and exercises on their own, but received no additional professional aid, were significantly happier in their relationship. And these effects lasted when assessed a year later. Simply reading this book proved so successful that it actually bollocksed the research. The original experiment had been designed to use these book-only couples as a control group to test marital therapy techniques. Considering the current book's great track record, you may wonder why we've chosen to revise it. The answer is simple. John's research and work with couples have progressed since he first crunched the numbers on what makes marriages thrive and how to predict and prevent divorce. There are now 42 years of longitudinal data on the importance of marital friendship. There is also a growing body of statistics on marital outcomes among diverse populations, including low-income families, partners who have recently become parents, same-sex couples, and those from diverse ethnic backgrounds. This work has confirmed the universality of the 7 principles and advanced our understanding of why they are so powerful and how couples can best utilize them. Perhaps most notably, in the years since the 7 Principles was first published, John and his wife, therapist Dr. Julie Gottman, have put these research findings to work through the Gottman Institute. This organization offers direct support to couples through seminars and therapy, and also trains professionals in providing counseling based on John's research. Thanks to the Institute, classes on the 7 Principles are taught worldwide. The Institute's therapeutic and educational work has a synergetic relationship with laboratory research. It both benefits from the scientific findings and helps the Gottmans apply the theory to couples in need. A growing body of controlled studies has demonstrated the positive impact of this approach. For example, in a randomized clinical trial, unhappy couples who participated in a combination of Gottman workshops on conflict resolution and marital friendship, in conjunction with 9 sessions of Gottman method couples therapy based on the 7 principles, showed the greatest lasting benefit and least relapse when assessed a year later. Another area of great success for the Gottman Institute has been in supporting couples after the birth of their first child, a stressful time in most marriages. About 67% of couples experience a large drop in marital satisfaction in the 3 years after the birth of their first baby. The Bringing Baby Home workshop uses the 7 Principles approach to address the specific concerns of new parents. In a randomized clinical trial, unhappy couples who participated in the 2-day program significantly reversed the drop in their marital satisfaction. The program also reduced postpartum depression and hostility between spouses, and improved both of the parents' interaction with the baby and the child's emotional and language development. Hospital-based studies in Australia and Iceland have shown similar results. This new edition is an opportunity to share with listeners all that we have learned from the Love Lab and the Gottman Institute's work. Throughout, you'll find clarifications and important additions and revisions that address the pressures and tensions that modern couples face. We've also expanded and updated the interactive nature of the 7 principles. For each principle, you'll find questionnaires with high reliability and validity, so you can assess its status in your own relationship, and new or revised exercises to enhance it. The exercises have been thoroughly vetted by numerous participants in the Gottman Institute's workshops and those in couples therapy with institute-trained practitioners. One of the strengths of the 7 principles approach is its versatility in addressing all stages of a relationship. This book is for you if you're single and looking to road test your relationship before making a permanent commitment. It is also for you if you've already committed and want to bolster and protect what you have. If you and your partner are facing dramatic life changes or challenges, the 7 principles will help you keep connected. Following the guidance in this book may also rescue a marriage that is already in deep danger. Of course, no relationship guide can salvage every marriage, nor is it true that every match should be saved. Sometimes negativity and betrayal so consume a relationship that it has really already died by the time the couple seeks support. But the right form of assistance can repair far more relationships and offer a greater degree of hope than the divorce statistics would suggest. Anyone who works with or studies couples is left humbled and awed by the tenacity, resourcefulness, and grit of people who love each other and are determined to make their marriages work. We wrote this book to be a fitting companion for their journey. Much has changed in the 15-plus years since the arrival of the first edition of the 7 Principles, but one fact has held constant. A romantic and sexual long-term committed relationship with another human remains the greatest gift life can offer. We hope this new edition of the 7 Principles safeguards and strengthens your relationship and helps you add purpose and meaning to the life you build together. 1. Inside the Seattle Love Lab. The Truth About Happy Marriages. It's a surprisingly cloudless Seattle morning as newlyweds Mark and Janice sit down to breakfast. Outside the apartment's picture window, the waters of Montlake cut a deep blue swath, while runners jog and geese waddle along the lakeside park. Mark and Janice are enjoying the view as they munch on their French toast and share the Sunday paper. Later, Mark will probably switch on the football game while Janice chats over the phone with her mom in St. Louis. All seems ordinary enough inside this studio apartment until you notice the 3 video cameras bolted to the wall, the microphones clipped talk show style to Mark and Janice's collars, and the Holter monitors strapped around their chests. Mark and Janice's lovely studio with a view is really not their apartment at all. It's a laboratory at the University of Washington in Seattle, where for 16 years I spearheaded the most extensive and innovative research ever into marriage and divorce. As part of one of these studies, Mark and Janice, as well as 49 other randomly selected couples, volunteered to stay overnight in a fabricated apartment affectionately known as the Love Lab. Their instructions were to act as naturally as possible, despite my team of scientists observing them from behind the one-way kitchen mirror, the cameras recording their every word and facial expression, and the sensors tracking bodily signs of stress or relaxation, such as how quickly their hearts pounded. To preserve basic privacy, the couples were monitored only from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., and never while in the bathroom. The apartment came equipped with a fold-out sofa, working kitchen, phone, TV, and music player. Couples were told to bring their groceries, books, laptops, needlepoint, hand weights, even their pets, whatever they would need to experience a typical weekend. Our goal was nothing more ambitious than to uncover the truth about marriage, to finally answer the questions that have puzzled people for so long. Why is marriage so tough at times? Why do some lifelong relationships click, while others just tick away like a time bomb? And how can you prevent a marriage from going bad, or rescue one that is already in trouble? Predicting divorce with 91% accuracy. Thanks to decades of research, these questions can finally be answered. In fact, I can predict with great precision whether a couple will stay happily together or lose their way after listening to them interact for as little as 15 minutes. Over 7 separate studies, my accuracy rate in making such predictions has averaged 91%. In other words, in 91% of the cases where I predicted that a couple's marriage would eventually either fail or succeed, time proved me right. I don't think my success in foretelling divorce earns me any bragging rights because it isn't due to some superhuman perception or intuition. Instead, it rests solely on the science, the decades of data my colleagues and I accumulated. At first, you might be tempted to shrug off our research results as just another in a long line of newfangled theories. Skepticism is certainly called for when someone tells you they've figured out what really makes marriages last and can show you how to rescue or divorce-proof your own. Plenty of people consider themselves to be experts on marriage and are more than happy to give you their opinion of how to form a more perfect union. But that's the key word, opinion. Before the breakthroughs our research provided, point of view was pretty much all that anyone trying to help couples had to go on. And that included just about every qualified, talented, and well-trained marriage counselor out there. Usually, a responsible therapist's approach to helping couples was, and often still is, based on his or her professional training and experience, intuition, family history, perhaps even religious conviction. But the one thing it was not based on was hard scientific evidence, because there really hadn't been any rigorous scientific data about why some marriages succeeded and others collapsed. Predicting divorce makes for great headlines, but sometimes the statistics can be confusing. I've heard people dismiss the scientific approach to assessing marriage by pointing out that with the divorce rate at about 50%, even random guessing would lead to a pretty good prediction rate. But that interpretation is based on a misunderstanding of what we are analyzing. That widely cited 50% rate is a general estimate of divorce over 40 years of marriage. Our studies predict divorce over a much shorter time frame. For example, in a study of 130 newlywed couples, we determined which 15 of them would divorce over the next 7 years, based on our analysis of their interactions. In fact, 17 couples divorced, including our 15, making our prediction rate for that study 98%. Over the years, other laboratories using methods we pioneered have also tallied impressive successes at prediction, thus confirming that our long-term findings were stable scientific results, not anomalies. For example, the labs headed by Rand Conger at Iowa State University and Tom Bradbury at the University of California, Los Angeles, have both made highly accurate predictions of a marriage's fate by analyzing a couple's physiological responses while they discussed a single conflict. In another landmark study of newlyweds, psychologist Janice Keycolt-Glaser, her husband Ron Glaser, and their colleagues at The Ohio State University were able to measure the levels of the stress-related hormone adrenaline in the blood of newlywed couples while they argued. 10 years later, the researchers determined that, compared with the couples who remained happily married, those who ended up unhappy or divorced had secreted 34% higher levels of adrenaline while arguing as newlyweds. These researchers also found that another stress hormone, ACTH, was twice as high in the newlywed wives who ended up in troubled marriages or divorced 10 years later, compared with the happily married women. In other words, these researchers were able to predict the fate of newlywed couples 10 years later just by measuring hormone levels in their blood during their first year of marriage. Although the ability to predict divorce through laboratory research has made for great advances in the study of long-term relationships, I don't think it is this project's most significant contribution. Instead, I think my most rewarding discovery has been the 7 principles, which aren't just about predicting divorce, but also about preventing it. Unlike so many other approaches to helping couples, ours is based on knowing what makes marriages succeed rather than on what makes them fail. We no longer have to guess about why some couples stay so happily married. Thanks to years of scientific data and analysis, we really can identify what makes happily married couples different from everybody else. Emotionally intelligent marriages. What can make a marriage work is surprisingly simple. Happily married couples aren't smarter, richer, or more psychologically astute than others. But in their day-to-day lives, they have hit upon a dynamic that keeps their negative thoughts and feelings about each other, which all couples have, from overwhelming their positive ones. Rather than creating a climate of disagreement and resistance, they embrace each other's needs. When addressing a partner's request, their motto tends to be a helpful yes and rather than yes but. This positive attitude not only allows them to maintain, but also to increase the sense of romance, play, fun, adventure, and learning together that are at the heart of any long-lasting love affair. They have what I call an emotionally intelligent marriage. I can predict whether a couple will divorce after watching and listening to them for just 15 minutes. Emotional intelligence has become widely recognized as an important predictor of a child's success later in life. The more in touch with feelings and the better able a child is to understand and get along with others, the sunnier that child's future, whatever his or her academic IQ. The same is true for spouses. The more emotionally intelligent a couple, the better able they are to understand, honor, and respect each other and their marriage, the more likely that they will indeed live happily ever after. Just as parents can teach their children emotional intelligence, this is also a skill that couples can learn. As simple as it sounds, developing this ability can keep husband and wife on the positive side of the divorce odds. Why save your marriage? One of the saddest reasons a marriage dies is that neither spouse recognizes its value until it is too late. Only after the papers have been signed, the furniture divided, and separate apartments rented, do the exes realize how much they really gave up when they gave up on each other. Too often, a good marriage is taken for granted rather than given the nurturing and respect it deserves and desperately needs. Some people may think that getting divorced or languishing in an unhappy marriage is no big deal. They may even consider it a simple fact of modern life. But there's now plenty of evidence documenting just how harmful both divorce and an unhappy relationship can be for all involved. Thanks to the work of researchers Lois Verbrugge and James House, both of the University of Michigan, we now know that an unhappy marriage can increase your chances of getting sick by roughly 35%, and even shorten your life by an average of 4 to 8 years. The flip side? People who are happily married live longer, healthier lives than either divorced people or those who are unhappily married. Scientists know for certain that these differences exist, but we are not yet sure why. Part of the answer may simply be that in an unhappy marriage, people experience chronic, diffuse physiological arousal. In other words, they feel physically stressed and usually emotionally overwrought as well. This puts added wear and tear on the body and mind, which can present itself in any number of physical ailments, including high blood pressure and heart disease, and in a host of psychological troubles, including anxiety, depression, substance abuse, psychosis, violence, and suicide. Not surprisingly, happily married couples have a far lower rate of such maladies. They also tend to be more health conscious than others. Researchers theorize that spouses keep after each other to have regular checkups, take medicine, eat nutritiously, and so on. People who stay married live 4 to 8 years longer than people who don't. But there is growing evidence that a good marriage may also keep you healthier by directly benefiting your immune system, which spearheads the body's defenses against illness. Researchers have known for about 2 decades that divorce can depress the immune system's function. Theoretically, this decline in the system's ability to fight foreign invaders could leave you open to more infectious diseases and cancers. Now we have found that the opposite may also be true. Not only do happily married people avoid this drop in immune function, but their immune systems may even be getting an extra boost. When we assessed the immune system responses of the 50 couples who stayed overnight in the Love Lab, we found a striking difference between those who were very satisfied with their marriages and those whose emotional response to each other was neutral or who were unhappy. Specifically, we used blood samples from each subject to test the response of certain of their white blood cells, the immune system's major defense weapons. In general, happily married men and women showed a greater proliferation of these white blood cells when exposed to foreign invaders than did the other subjects. Researchers Janice Kiecolt-Glaser and Ron Glaser tested the effectiveness of other immune system warriors, the natural killer cells, which, true to their name, destroy body cells that have been damaged or altered, such as infected or cancerous ones, and are also known to limit the growth of tumor cells. Again, subjects who were satisfied with their marriage had more effective natural killer cells than did the others. It will take more study before scientists can confirm that this boost in the immune system is one of the mechanisms by which a good marriage benefits your health and longevity. But what's most important is that we know for certain that a good marriage does offer these advantages. I often think that if fitness buffs spent just 10% of their weekly workout time, say 20 minutes a day, working on their marriage instead of their bodies, they would get 3 times the health benefits they derive from exercise class or the treadmill. When a marriage goes sour, husband and wife are not the only ones to suffer. The children do too. In a study I conducted of 63 preschoolers, those being raised in homes where there was great marital hostility had chronically elevated levels of stress hormones compared with the other children studied. We don't know what the long-term repercussions of this stress will be for their health, but we do know that this biological indication of extreme stress was echoed in their behavior. We followed them through age 15 and found that, compared with other children their age, these kids suffered far more from truancy, depression, peer rejection, behavioral problems, especially aggression, low achievement at school, and even school failure. One important message of these findings is that it is not wise to stay in a bad marriage for the sake of your children. It is clearly harmful to raise kids in a home that is consumed by hostility. A peaceful divorce is preferable to endless marital warfare. Unfortunately, many divorces are not peaceful. Too often there is mutual enmity between the parents that continues after the breakup. For that reason, children of divorce often fare just as poorly as those caught in the crossfire of a miserable marriage. Innovative research, revolutionary findings. When it comes to saving a marriage, the stakes are high for everybody in the family. And yet, despite the documented importance of marital satisfaction, the amount of scientifically sound research into keeping marriages stable and happy is shockingly small. When I first began researching marriage more than 40 years ago, you could probably have held all of the good scientific data on marriage in one hand. By good, I mean findings that were collected using scientific methods as rigorous as those used by medical science. For example, many studies of marital happiness were conducted solely by having husbands and wives fill out questionnaires. This approach is called the self-report method, and although it has its uses, it is also quite limited. How do you know a wife is happy just because she checks the happy box on some form? Women in physically abusive relationships, for example, score very high on questionnaires about marital satisfaction. Only if the woman being abused feels safe and is interviewed alone does she reveal the truth. To address this paucity of quality research, my colleagues and I supplemented traditional approaches to studying marriage with more extensive and innovative methods. We tracked the fates of 700 couples in 7 different studies. We didn't just look at newlyweds, but also at long-term couples who were first assessed while in their 40s or 60s. In addition, we analyzed couples who had just had their first baby and couples parenting preschoolers and teenagers. We have examined the relationships of couples from diverse socioeconomic, racial, and ethnic groups and sexual orientations. Most of my long-term studies have entailed extensive interviews in which the spouses detailed for me the history of their marriage, their philosophy about relationships, and how they viewed the marriages of others, including their parents. I videotaped them talking to each other about how their day went, discussing areas of continuing disagreement in their marriage, and also conversing about joyful topics. And to get a physiological read of how stressed or relaxed they were feeling, I measured their heart rate, blood velocity, sweat output, respiration, and endocrine and immune function throughout these taped interactions. In all of these studies, I played back the tapes to the couples and asked them for an insider's perspective of what they were thinking and feeling when, say, their heart rate or blood pressure suddenly surged during a marital discussion. Then I kept track of the couples, checking in with them at least once a year till the study's end to see how their relationship was faring. Couples who attend my workshop have a relapse rate that's about half that from standard marital therapy. My colleagues and I were the first researchers to conduct such an exhaustive observation and analysis of married couples. Our data offered the first real glimpse of the inner workings, the anatomy, of marriage. These results, not my own opinions, form the basis of my 7 principles for making marriage work. These principles, in turn, are the cornerstones of the remarkably effective short-term therapy for couples that I developed along with my wife, clinical psychologist Dr. Julie Gottman. Thousands of couples have now attended our programs. Almost all of them came to us because their marriage was in deep distress. Some were on the verge of divorce. Many were skeptical that a simple workshop based on the 7 principles could turn their relationship around. Fortunately, their skepticism was unfounded. Our findings indicate that these workshops have made a profound and powerful difference in these couples' lives. When it comes to judging the effectiveness of marital therapy, it seems that the 1-year mark is a pivotal point. Usually, by then, the couples who are going to relapse after therapy already have. Those who retain the benefits of therapy through the first year tend to continue them long term. So, we put our workshops to the test by doing an extensive 12-month follow-up of 640 couples. I'm happy to report a success rate of about 75%. I'm even happier to report a very low relapse rate of 20%. The nationwide relapse rate for standard behavioral marital therapy is 30 to 50%. More specifically, we found that at the beginning of our workshops, 27% of the couples were at very high risk for divorce, but at our 12-month follow-up, after 9 sessions, that proportion had dropped to 7%. The rate plummeted to 4% for struggling couples who also underwent 9 additional sessions of our couples therapy. Furthermore, we found that prevention workshops, in which couples worked on their relationship before conflict began to take its toll, were even 3 times more effective than our workshops designed for couples who were already troubled. Why most marriage therapy fails. In recent years, other laboratories have obtained similar findings to ours and have also developed techniques both for improving couples therapy and preventing relationship problems. But despite the gradual increase in useful and hopeful approaches, the majority of marriage therapists are still offering treatment that does not get to the heart of what makes a long-term relationship last. In order to achieve the next level of understanding about how to keep our relationships thriving, we need to throw out some long-hallowed beliefs about marriage and divorce. If you've had or are having trouble in your relationship, you've probably gotten lots of advice. Sometimes it seems like everybody who has ever been married or knows anyone who has ever been married thinks he or she holds the secret to guaranteeing endless love.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?